Everyone, welcome back again. I hope most of you could handle this in WonderMe. So now we would like to welcome Luisa Cabeza from the University of Lleida. It is the second time that Luisa is here with us at the symposium already, and one can say that Luisa is really one of the worldwide leading researchers in the area of thermal energy storage. Luisa holds a PhD in industrial engineering. Then she spent some time in the late 90s in Philadelphia. And then since 1999, she's a full professor at University of Lleida, having there really a huge group since many years on thermal energy storage under many different aspects. And when seeing all the publications, I think it's over 350 now that she has in peer-reviewed articles, then one is always looks to Luisa what next comes. And one very good aspect is that I think since a few years now you are more and more looking as well into social acceptance, or how to go into society with these topics and how to bring that topic further. And for that, you will give a talk, and we are looking very forward to that, Luisa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jörg. Let me share my screen. So I hope that now you can all see my screen. Okay.
Looks good, yes.
Okay, great. So good morning to everybody. Always a pleasure. Pity that I cannot be in person in Lucerne. This time I really was hoping to be able to visit you, but hopefully very soon. But anyhow, I think it's a pleasure to be here again. Also, I have to say that although this topic is of high interest to me, it's a bit challenging because, as you know, I'm not a social scientist. I'm an engineer, a technologist. So even though I have a lot of interest, it's somehow I'm learning on how to study this topic. So today what I bring is more an overview of what is in the literature and my thoughts than real research, let's say. I had a few slides on where Lleida is in the northeast of Spain and the west of Catalonia, but I will go through very fast here. So on what we do, that mostly, as you said, it's thermal energy storage, but also we are growing a lot on artificial intelligence. And of course, we use it also in our energy systems and thermal energy storage systems. But as I said, I will just go fast through the research group and our networking, which is what brings us into, being able to develop different topics of research and what it brings here. And I drop into the talk itself. So as the first thing I did when I started to how to see how to present this, I thought, okay, since most of us here are also more technologists than social scientists, I thought, what is exactly social acceptance? Because we all talk about this, we heard about this, but it's somehow maybe not all of us have the same thoughts about it. And just in Wikipedia, you have this kind of long definition, but here are things that I like and I like to highlight. It says social acceptance affects people of all social and age groups. So that's something that to me it's very important because now, because also pressure of funding agencies, we are starting to think about gender and how this affects our research, but we also need to see that there are other aspects like social status or even the age that would affect how our research, even if we don't think so. Also, it says that social acceptance can be defined as tolerating the difference and diversity of others because most people attempt to look and act like others and try to fit in. And here there is an example on how, teenagers and young people try to look cool, and usually they do this by copying their friends, no? And that affects their way they dress or they wear their clothes, or of course, unfortunately, if they drink or take drugs. But to me, what is interesting is that we tend to copy what we think that it's cool or that it will make us fit better in our society. And that's why it's interesting. And if you have heard about it, there is this topic on, lighthouses. So people who do, to give example, and then all the other ones are mainly followers. I also give this example, and this is actually when I started to be interested in social acceptance. I thought, okay, so this is an example with blinds, but you can put it in also any technology. We are developing these very smart blinds for windows, and maybe we even put PCMs in them, and then we develop a super control on it that, depending on the weather forecast and the temperatures outside and the lighting and sun, and how this could affect the thermal comfort, it's everything programmed and everything goes automatically, and it's super fancy, and we have calculated with many models how good this will happen. And then, we install this in a building, and the owner of the building says, no, I just put it in manual mode because this is not, I was here today, like I'm now here in Barcelona, and it's very sunny. So I want it to be up because it's sunny and I want to see the light, okay? Even though maybe the system is telling, no, you should now shade it a bit to decrease the sun heat coming in, no? That would be more in summer. So that's the thing. If the society, if the final user doesn't accept our technology, it doesn't matter whatever we do, that it will never reach the market. So I went and thought, okay, so we are talking about this for a few years now. Let's see what it's in the literature. And I just did a very, like a search, simple search in Scopus to see how many documents we can find on this topic. And as you can see, if you put social acceptance, you find up to around 7,000 documents. That for me, it's quite low, because when you look at things like climate change, you get hundreds of thousands, okay? So you can see that this topic, even though it's kind of like hot today and people talk about it, there is not many research being done in it. But when we put social acceptance and technology, it's only 2,400 papers. And when we put social acceptance and energy, it's only about 1,300 papers. Not to mention that if we go to social acceptance and energy storage, we only have find 27 papers. And with thermal energy storage, I only found 3. So as you can see, even though this is something that maybe and probably we have been talking for a while, there is not that much literature that is addressing this topic and also showing us how to do this in the correct way so that really the technologies reach the market. So when I analyzed these 3 papers, these are the ones that I found. And as you can see, one is from 2019, but 2 are from 2021. So again, very new. The one from 2029, which is from this group of people, Caneiro et al., the title of their paper is Opportunities for Large-Scale Energy Storage in Geological Formations in Mainland Portugal. And actually, when you look at the paper, social acceptance, it's only mentioned once and in the abstract. So in fact, it's kind of like a recognition that this is something important for their research, but it's not really addressed in the paper. Similarly, in the second one is about a review on parabolic solar cookers with thermal energy storage by Lensbe et al. And here, social acceptance is mentioned once in the abstract and once in the conclusions. So for me, it's already interesting that it's highlighted in the conclusions, but it's not developed throughout the paper at all, not even in the introduction. But in a way, they recognize in the conclusions that using parabolic solar cookers with thermal energy storage, again, it needs this social acceptance to be used because most of the solar cookers today don't have thermal energy storage. And the final paper, it's from our colleagues from here in Barcelona, with Solsona et al. And here they published this paper on why it's so hard exploring social barriers for the deployment of thermal energy storage in the Spanish buildings. Actually, this was done within a national project that we have coordinated with a group from Ines. And here social acceptance appears in the keywords and in the introduction, okay? And social aspects are highlighted as a social cultural factor that can explain this mismatch between this technology development, but the actual implementation of thermal energy storage that we know is still low. But again, it's not really developed or studied throughout the paper. So what I did is I went back and I thought, okay, why is this? And of course, I kind of already have done this because we, as I said, we did this within a national project. And one of the main challenges is that if you go into the street and you ask to the people, so what do you think about thermal energy storage? They don't even know what is thermal energy storage. Of course, if you talk about water tanks, they know, but we know that thermal energy storage is much more than water tanks. And it's a bit the same in the industry. The industries that do energy recovery, most of them or some of them also do storage. But for them, it's energy recovery. It's not energy storage. But anyway, I looked at the literature and on those, over 2,000 papers, because I didn't look at all of them, but I tried to evaluate how the social acceptance is seen in these papers. And I did that by evaluating the keywords, okay? And then I tried to group these keywords and see, okay, so these papers that are actually talking about solar acceptance in energy topics, what are they about these papers, okay? And we see that there are a few keywords related to technology themselves, and most of them, as you see, are actually digitalization. So it's artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, digitalization, emerging technologies, sensors. And okay, you find here the word social media, which I kind of related this to technology because usually it's studied through digitalization. Then, of course, there are all the keywords related to energy. And you have those that for me are more technologies, which is wind, electrical vehicle, renewable energy, bioenergy, blah, blah, blah. But you also find words related to energy planning, demand response, and energy transition, and energy justice, okay? And when we go to energy justice is when you go to the papers which are much more developed by social scientists. We also found, or I also found a lot of keywords related to environmental aspects. And at the end, you realize that when we talk about social acceptance and we talk about the energy system, most of it is done because of decarbonization, climate change, carbon dioxide, sustainable development, these new drivers that are brought to us by actually, the goals that we have as a society or by the goals that our politicians have. And you can find also life cycle assessment because this is one of the tools that is seen. But also there are keywords related to economic aspects. And here, again, being from a technology part, there are words that or keywords that I find interesting. One of them is willingness to pay. And this is really, of course, an economic aspect, but to me, it's very much related to the social acceptance. And we all know that, and this is because of experience on renewable energy more than in thermal energy storage, that there is really people that are willing to pay a bit more for a system because they have this feeling of view of sustainability themselves, okay? But usually when we talk in other, like more into business related issues like industry or investments by constructors for buildings, the willingness to pay is much more related to the payback that they will have, okay? So, or because it makes the company achieve this label of environmental or being more green or sustainability, or it because, this person knows that when they're going to sell this building, they can sell it a little bit more expensive because it has this label on sustainability or in energy efficiency. So to me, this willingness to pay, it's very interesting, and it's something that, again, it's related maybe we can calculate it more easily related to the payback, but not only to this. And it brings this, another key point in that we could, or should evaluate in our analysis. For example, when we do cost-benefit analysis, how to incorporate this social part in our research. And then, of course, there are the keywords related to what I call social aspects. Again, I'm not a social scientist, so if I say something that somebody doesn't agree, sure, as I said, I'm just learning. And here, there are words like adoption, focus group, technology adoption, ethics. To me, this is very interesting. But for example, responsible innovation, which is a methodology developed today and really much embraced by the European Commission, co-creation. But then, you have people like, keywords like public opinion, perception. You come into things like rural development, because, there is a lot on renewables that it's very much related to this area on research. And for example, keywords that for me are so interesting is local opposition. And that in many areas there is this problem with implementing the new energy technologies. And this is very much research. And then the keyword NIMBY. This is not in my backyard. I don't know how familiar you are with this keyword, not in my backyard, but this is very interesting. It's when, we say that, yeah, we are embracing, for example, renewable energies. But then when you learn that you are going to have a big windmill next home, you don't want it there. So it's, yes, you are pro of it, but then not near me, because I don't like it. It doesn't look good. It breaks my, the views from home, things like this. So this concept of not in my backyard has been very much studied. And it's this evaluation of how people say yes to something until you have it at home. No. Then I thought, okay, so there are many what it's called dimensions, no, on social acceptance. It's not only the society itself. And then I found this paper by my German is not that great, Bustenhagen, in 2007 already, that said that social acceptance have actually 5 dimensions. The first one is the socio-political acceptance. So this is when you study mainly this acceptance by policymakers or the general public, but it's based on this, that you see that this is a push from policies or from regulations. This, and you will see later, it's, I was also interested in, okay, so how do I measure this social acceptance, no? Because being a scientist, I always like to measure things. And here it was clear that it's usually done via opinion polls. Then there is the other dimension, which is more focused on the market acceptance. And here, according to this paper, it focuses on the willingness to pay models and the diffusion of new technologies in households and corporate organizations. This is a bit what I already discussed about this willingness to pay. So it's when, especially when you do economic evaluations, don't stop with the cost-benefit analysis or the strict payback analysis, but maybe you also need to add this component of this willingness to pay to understand better, what is the price that you can post into one technology, so you also can know what is your cost. Then there is the community acceptance. This usually evaluates mostly the local response to big infrastructures. So here we are more talking about what happens if we are discussing on adding, a big wind farm, and therefore it would be if we happen to put a big battery storage or big molten salts somewhere, that it affects, of course, a community and how this community reacts against this big infrastructure. Okay, so I have already explained this, but maybe it is interesting to see that this socio-political acceptance that I discussed at the beginning is done mainly by policymakers and the general public, and sometimes some key stakeholders participate in it. And here the important question that we are trying to answer, or they are trying to answer, is what is the best policy measure that is needed so that the society accepts this technology? And here is usually more mainly related to incentives, or to, you know, like taxes, incentives, this type of incentives that come from policymakers, but also it can be about research incentives. And this for me was also very interesting, you know, because at the end, this is a lot of what we have been working lately, that, you know, we need to influence policymakers to understand that this technology is needed. So they put this technology both in their incentives, for example, for new energy systems, or for energy efficient in industry, but also they develop new research programs, including this technology. In the market acceptance, again, this is done by the consumers and the market, and is the willingness to pay the important question. And in the community acceptance, for me, this is also interesting from, you know, a personal point of view, because here is where the important question to answer, according to this paper by FAST in 2013, is that, is there a fair decision-making process? And again, with the examples that I have given you, probably you have seen it either in your community or in your region or in your country, you know. There are some infrastructures that will affect that community. Of course, we always think, or politicians think, that we do need this infrastructure for the benefit of the whole area or country. But how does this affect to this local community? And is it fair that they have to, you know, give something for the benefit of a bigger group? As I told you earlier, when I was preparing this, because I have also been thinking on how to do this in the past, I thought, okay, so how do we measure social acceptance? What experiments do I have to do to measure social acceptance? And this confirmed what I already knew, and what I'm not happy about is that most of this is done through surveys. So for example, I found this paper published in 2022 that they did an online survey. Before, they usually were like face-to-face surveys, and with a statistical analysis behind it. To me, the problem of surveys is what I said at the very beginning of my talk, and is that for a survey to be efficient, the technology has to be well known. You know, today, even with renewables, which are much more well known by the society, when you evaluate this, you a lot of times wonder if this person really understood. You know, usually wind farms are not a big deal, but sometimes with solar, people only know about photovoltaic. So you're asking them about CSP, they don't really know. You ask them with thermal energy, thermal solar energy, and they mix up. So if we have this problem with renewables, imagine with thermal energy storage. No? As I said before, if I'm trying to understand if a person is willing to pay a bit more for their house, where I have put, for example, PCMs in the walls to reduce the energy demand, how, you know, easy it will be for me to explain this person what this technology is and what are the benefits and the drawbacks, so that I can really assess their acceptance. So I come up to the conclusions. And as I said, for me, social acceptance is essential for a technology to reach the market. You can also find in the literature that social acceptance is recognized as a clear barrier for the development of thermal energy storage and its deployment, and many other technologies, of course, but especially for ours. And also I found that there is a clear literature gap on evaluating this social acceptance and how to increase it. And we developed this figure to understand that we talk a lot about non-technological barriers. And for me, the social barriers, including social acceptance, is on the very top, and is one that can really make that our technology deploys or not. Because it really, if we don't reach the social acceptance, including in even engineers or architects or policymakers, we will never make it there. So of course, I need to thank the funders of our research and to all of you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luisa. Thank you very, very much for this talk in a topic where, well, when we call it social acceptance, maybe you named it at the end. Is it maybe more awareness than acceptance?
I think it's both. I think awareness comes before acceptance. So I can be aware of that, and then I have to decide if I accept it or not. So to me, the problem is that there is not enough awareness to really be able to evaluate the acceptance. And the awareness usually comes from training, from dissemination. So it's that the people know about the technology. We've done a little bit of research on an EU project that we have, actually with real social scientists from Sussex University, and they always told us this. They were telling us when we go to interview people, even energy managers in big buildings, and you talk to them about biomass or solar energy or geothermal, they are not. Also, let's say that they know more from what they have seen in the news than real knowledge, and then this awareness is very much depends on what they have heard, and that also the word doesn't come to me now in English, but I mean sometimes you don't have the full knowledge, you have just one part, and your awareness or your acceptance comes more from this fact that you don't know all the advantages and disadvantages, than to the real technology itself. If this happens with renewables in general, imagine with thermal energy storage.
So there is one comment in the questions and answers, which is about the wording, which is a bit about well, when talking about thermal energy storage, shouldn't we better talk about heat battery, because then people would be more, well, would know what it's about better. So do you think we could improve in that?
Yeah, actually this heat battery wording came a few years ago, and I liked it very much. Of course, from as a professor in thermal sciences or thermodynamics, not even thermal storage I like, because it's thermal energy storage. We store energy, which is thermal. We don't store thermal itself. So I've been fighting a lot for that. But it's true that to go out in the society, heat battery really would work much better. Yes.
Okay. Well, there was one particular question as well about one aspect of thermal storage, if one could store a bit more and provide flexibility in fridges. So, for example, in smaller instances in the houses and so on. Have you dealt with this topic?
Yeah, we did a PhD a few years ago already on this. And actually it was more or less at the same time that the ZTI was developing, their dryers with zeolites. So we were, working in including thermal energy storage in appliances. Here, probably the acceptance, you need to explain it to the final user from my point of view, that they could reach a higher energy level than to explain them that you have thermal energy storage in it. They don't care if you have zeolite or PCM in your refrigerator or in your dryer. What they care is that maybe they can get an A++ and therefore save more energy in there usually. So Also, that's the point, you know, when you have to evaluate this, to me, how do you ask questions? It's very important because me as a, even if I'm an engineer, when I'm Luisa Cabeza and I do something from my home, you say things differently, you know, and so usually I don't care if there is storage in there. I care that the efficiency is better, you know, like in the house. I don't care if I have PCMs in the walls. What I care is that I don't have any problem with this. There is no leakage and blah, blah, blah. And my house will have less energy demand, so I will pay less heating at the end of the month.
Yeah. So there is one question more about really about in industry. It depends, probably this kind of acceptance depends a lot on the stakeholders. So where are we playing? Mm-hmm. So if we look at industry, what do you think is particularly in there? So what are the ways to do so? Is it just by teaching? Is it by making more aware, or is it more than that?
No, I think that in the industry, it's a lot about awareness, as you said, and it has to come at both two levels, at least, if not three. First one, it has to be the managers, and in there, you know, they are usually more interested in how they decrease their expenses, their cost, and it can be energy cost, it can be CO2 cost, and things like this. They don't care that much about energy efficiency. What they care is that their cost lower so that their business is more profitable, because that's, you know, how it has to be. When you talk to the engineers, then it's when, you know, they are more, you know, concerned because they have this push on reducing cost, and so they know that this comes from energy efficiency, and then the discourse that has to be different, but they need to understand that this is a key technology that can help them a lot. And this, it's happening now, I think, because we have been talking about renewable energies and storage in our university for the last 20 years. But I always say, when I studied, I never had any single course on renewable energies. So we didn't even know what storage was, you know. So now we have these new generations of people that are coming out. And for me, the third level is the maintenance people. You know, just yesterday I was in a company that they are trying to evaluate their energy efficiency, and I was happy that by themselves they brought in the same room us researchers with the manager, the engineer, and the people from maintenance. Because at the end, if they don't accept this technology, if they see that this complicates much more the system, it will give them more headaches, they will also resist into adopting this.
Thank you very much, Luisa. So there were other hands up and so on. I'm sorry, I have to stop now because the session will go on. Thank you very, very much for that. I think for all of us, maybe the message is, you have shown that as well, there is not a lot of thoughts about it. And maybe part is, let's do things, let's demonstrate things so that awareness goes up. But as well, let's think more about the topic like you do. How can we make people aware, and with that accept then as well, or drive then acceptance additionally, and with whom in politics, with whom in society we have to talk. So thank you for the talk that should initiate as well something with us. Thanks a lot.
No,
Luisa.
I'm happy that also people is interested in it, because we all need to think about this also. Thank you very much, and I'm available also. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.